Oh, what the? Sorry about that. Hey there, I'm Swaggy Van Dixon, and ancient Egypt wasn't all pyramids and pharaohs. Today, we're going on an adventure through time, deeper into the heart of ancient Africa. First, we explore the beginning of organized agriculture in Africa. The big tractors and irrigation systems of today make it seem easy, but the ancient Egyptians had to work out all the kinks of this very complicated process. Now, we go to expert historian Axiom Stone to start our adventure.
In 10,000 BCE, the Sahara used to be filled with a luscious grassland, full of life, for hunting, fishing, and gathering. But over time, the climate of the Sahara Desert got hotter and drier. This caused people to migrate to areas like West Africa or bodies of water like Lake Chad and the Nile River. People who lived along the Nile River were especially prosperous because the annual flooding created rich soil and great agriculture.
The Nile, the longest river in the world, and one of the only rivers that flows north. After the desiccation of the Sahara, the Nile was a beacon of hope for the citizens of Africa. People from all around Africa flocked to the Nile River Valley. The land was very fertile, where one could grow crops and graze and raise cattle. The Nile flooding was very predictable and reliable, leaving silt deposits along the banks of the Nile, making it the most fertile land of all. Nile River flooding is exciting and a very important part of early African history. The first form of a major kingdom came in 3100 BCE when Menes, the conqueror, who claimed to be a descendant of the gods, rose to power in Egypt. He extended the upper half of Egypt to the lower half and connected the two by creating the city of Memphis. Menes is responsible for the creation of a unified state that is ruled by the pharaoh. The pharaohs were said to be sons of gods and were worshipped for that reason. During this period, Nubia becomes aware of the rising power of Egypt and then works to expand the trade and control of the Nile in order to maintain its independent self. About a century later, fighting erupts between the two. After centuries of quarreling, no clear winner is crowned. They both find a middle ground, and Nubia forms the kingdom of Kush. Egypt begins construction on the Great Pyramids around 2600 BCE.
Shortly after the end of the Old Kingdom, a period of upheaval starts to take over Egypt. Times begin to change for the worse. This begins when a group of nomadic horsemen called the Hyksos, or foreign rulers, invade Egypt. They have technology like horses, chariots, and bronze weapons, which makes it very easy for them to take over the Egyptian army, who can only use wood. The Hyksos spread through all of Lower Egypt, and even spread down to Memphis, a major city in Egypt, by 1674 BCE. Little did they know that this would be the end of their conquest. Following these revolts of anger against the Hyksos, Egyptian leaders began to gradually push them out, and by about 1550 BCE, they were removed from the Nile Delta, and the New Kingdom era began. The New Kingdom had very powerful pharaohs who ruled over the land and profited off of almost 1 million people. The one thing that changed in how the pharaoh ruled from previous times is the government became more of a bureaucracy. It was still ruled by the pharaoh, but he had parties that managed things like military, treasury, and other forms of the government. Then, this re-established government decided it had no interest in being invaded again. That is when they began showing signs of imperialism. Authority was spread well beyond the Nile Delta and the Nile River Valley. The pharaoh Thutmose III, who lived from about 1479 to 1425 BCE, led the most campaigns at 17, and they spread all the way up to Syria and Palestine. They even destroyed most of Nubia. Egypt then begins to fall into a decline, though, soon after. Nubia fights back and restores the kingdom of Kush around 1100 BC. The Nubians drove their army all the way up into Thebes, and not long after, the Assyrians invaded from the north with iron weapons. They took over Egypt and spread all the way into Thebes and drove out the Kushites that were still remaining. By the mid-7th century BCE, the Egyptian Empire had fallen to foreign rule.
Hey there, you didn't forget about me yet, did you? I'm Swaggy Van Dixon. The advancement of early agriculture allowed for the formation of large cities for the first time in history. Memphis and Thebes were among the first of these bustling hubs. Now, Sterling's Archer has more.
Thanks, Swaggy. I'm Sterling Archer here, and I'm here to talk to you about Egyptian cities. The Nile provided growth for many Egyptian cities, such as Thebes and Memphis, almost like maggots thrown to a fresh carcass.
In ancient Egypt, they had many capital cities throughout their storied history. Two of the most important capitals were Thebes and Memphis, the head of the delta. Thebes was essentially the administrative center of Upper Egypt. Thebes is located on the east bank of the Nile and was known in the native tongue as the City of Amun. Memphis had around 60,000 inhabitants, making it the largest city in the world at the time, whereas Thebes had around 40,000 people and was still relatively large. Memphis was located in a very strategic place as it was at the mouth of the Nile Delta. Memphis's fate followed the fate of Egypt eventually, and they lost power due to their economic status declining. Heliopolis was another important city in Egypt, as it was where the cult-worshipping Ra, god of the sun, was primarily located. Much of what we know of Heliopolis now is from ancient texts and hieroglyphics. Tanis was another large port city and was considered the religious center of northern Egypt. Ancient Egyptian cities were important, but not quite as prevalent as in Mesopotamia or other ancient civilizations. Nubia had several large cities, but their skill with the bow and arrow made Egyptians refer to them as the land of the bow. Nubia was a land of more districts than cities, as they had many people spread around their lands.
With the formation of complex cities, the peoples of the Nile River Valley started to form specialized labor. Bronze metallurgy developed around the 7th century BCE, much later than their Mesopotamian counterparts. Iron metallurgy also developed independently in Sudan and was widespread in Nubia by 500 BCE. Trade also developed. Egyptians and Nubians traveled up and down the Nile River Valley by way of sailboat, donkey caravan, and cart. Trade expeditions also went to Punt, which is modern-day Ethiopia and Somalia.
Around 3200 BCE, writings started to show up in Egypt. The writings would take two forms, the first being hieroglyphs, which were mainly used as temple inscriptions. The word hieroglyph in Greek literally translates into holy inscription. The second form being hieratic script, which came about 2600 BCE. This would be the everyday writing. Like modern humans, Egyptians used this to make life easier. Nubia would also adopt these writing styles until the 5th century BCE, when they developed Meroitic writing. Meroitic can still not be understood by historians today. One thing to understand about Egyptian culture is their value for education and writing. One of the most privileged lives was that of a scribe. Like most ancient civilizations, Egyptians organized a religion. The Egyptians had two principal gods, Amun, who was associated with sun, creation, and fertility, and Ra, a sun god. During the Old Kingdom, these two were paired together in the cult of Amun-Ra. For a period, Amun-Ra was challenged by the cult of Aten, a monotheistic sun god. He was championed by Akhenaten, who reigned as pharaoh from 1353 to 1335 BCE. With the passing of Akhenaten went the cult of Aten. Another strongly worshipped god was Osiris. Osiris was the god of the underworld and immortality. Egyptians associated Osiris with the Nile and their crops. Mummification was also a religious practice. Early on, only ruling elites would be mummified, but later so would royal officials and the wealthy. Still, commoners were not involved in this practice. Nubians had much of the same religious beliefs, including their own gods Apetimek and Saboom.
Your host, Swaggy Van Dixon's back. The start of big city life was great and all, but the Bantu people wanted no part of it. The Bantu migration started around present-day Congo and spread almost all the way across Africa. Now we go back to our historian, Axiom Stone.
Beginning around 4000 BCE, the Bantu language and society began in present-day Nigeria. Then the Bantu began to migrate to new parts of southern Africa, but their motives are still unclear and unknown. Although, two important features of the Bantu migrations were significant. One, the Bantus were effective canoers as they traveled up and down rivers and other bodies of water. Another feature of the Bantu people was their accomplishment of growing agricultural surpluses. With more food and resources than populations of hunting, fishing, and gathering people, the Bantus were able to increase their population more rapidly. Maybe the most significant effect of the Bantu migrations was the spread of agricultural societies in sub-Saharan Africa. The people then set up communities, mostly consisting of a few hundred people. In these communities, The people classified themselves through age and took responsibility based on their strength, energy, maturity, and experience. For example, older men would work more difficult tasks like cultivating fields and serving in the military because of their strength. But younger children and women would usually tend to domestic chores and other light public works.
Thanks for watching our program. This is Swaggy Van Dixon, signing out.